We are back with State Attorney General Josh Stein to answer some of your questions. You can text your questions to 336-379-5775. You might be tempted to call that number. Don't do it. You've got to send a text message with your question. Attorney General, we've been getting a lot of questions, and Into2 wants to know as well about evictions right now. There is this moratorium, but people still claim that they are being evicted. Is that illegal? Just a blanket answer or no?
Yeah, there rarely is just a blanket answer, but the governor did institute or extend the moratorium through the end of the month of January. And so there shouldn't be evictions for residential. And if people are being evicted, I encourage you to call your local legal aid office or call my office and let us know what's going on.
A lot of people have been reporting business violations, especially during our state of emergency here locally, but also across the state. What types of business violations can be reported to your office?
The types of business violations that we handle are those where there's a commercial transaction, where there's the business selling a good or a service to a consumer. And businesses have a legal obligation to treat their people fairly and not deceive them or trick them. So if you are out there and somebody's taking advantage of you commercially, file a complaint with my office. And it's very easy to do online at ncdoj.gov/complaint or that toll-free number, 877-5-NO-SCAM. And then we will do what we can to resolve the issue and make sure that businesses are complying with the law.
Someone's asking, is there anything that your office can do about employers that aren't providing PPE to employees or who aren't doing much to keep the work environment safe?
Those are the types of complaints that go to the Department of Labor, because that has to do with the employer-employee relationship, and the Department of Labor oversees that. My office comes into play when it's the business and a consumer, where there's not a contractual working relationship. It's having to do with a commercial transaction.
What type of penalties can people face if they're busted sending robocalls?
Well, each call is a violation of the law, and it can be up to $1,000 or even $5,000 per violation. We reached recently a resolution. We litigated it in court with 3 other states and the FTC against Dish Network for engaging in unlawful do not call violations, and we've recovered about $14 million back to the state in penalties, which will be going to help expand school technology and broadband for people who need it, which is great. And we filed an action against a guy in Texas who was making calls into North Carolina. I'm sure everybody gets those auto warranty calls, which are so annoying. And he'd made something like 75 million of them into North Carolina. We don't have a judgment yet. It hasn't gone to trial, but we did get an order from the court putting a stop to these calls while our case continues. And we hope to make the violator pay a substantial penalty.
Someone's asking about a follow-up to the eviction moratorium question, wanting to know whether they can be evicted by a tenant, or excuse me, they can be evicted by a landlord if they broke the lease in some way.
It depends on the nature of the breaking of the lease and whether it was COVID related. If you engaged in some violation of the lease that has nothing to do with your being sick with COVID or having lost your job with COVID, then the moratorium does not apply to you.
Interesting question here, and I think one a lot of people want to know. Why is it that I get so many robocalls from numbers with my same area code rather than just other area codes?
This is the question you asked earlier, Chad, about spoofing. Spoofing is where the phone, the robocaller, can actually misrepresent the number so that it looks something that's familiar. And oftentimes it's not only your area code, but it's the first 3 digits of your number as well. So you think, is this a neighbor? Is this a friend? Is this a family member? And that's what we're trying to get at technologically with this thing called stir shaken, where they can no longer misrepresent the number from where the call has originated. And when we do that, it'll be much easier for us to track down these wrongdoers. It's essentially like being at night in the kitchen. If you turn on the light and the kitchen's dirty, the cockroaches scatter because that light shines on them. What we want to do is shine the light so that these guys cannot hide in the darkness behind spoofed numbers any longer.
And we are all rooting for you to get them wherever they are hiding. Attorney General Josh Stein, thank you so much for your time today, as always. If you missed any of his responses, we're going to be posting these full segments on our YouTube page after the newscast.